بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So last week we went over in very, very simple terms, basics of Islamic faith. And one very important thing I want to talk about is that when we say, I believe in Allah, or I believe in this, or I believe in that, we mean I know, right? So some religions, they have a sense of trust, right? Like what my teachers have said, or are alleged to have said, must be true because it feels so true, right? So there's a sense of trust. And so that sense of trust has a place in Islam. It has a place in Islam, and there's certain places where that comes in. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about Aqidah. When we're talking about Aqidah, we're talking about what we know. So when we say this is a point of Aqidah, it means this is a 100% clear that the Prophet ﷺ said it. It's not possible that he didn't say it, right? And it's also not possible that he didn't mean it. So when we look at language most of the time is not crystal clear. Most of the time, language is not crystal clear, right? Let's take an example. I'm talking to a Christian about faith, right? I'm talking to a Christian about faith, and he says, for example, Jesus is the Son of God. And you say, in the Bible, what does it mean to be the Son of God? Given that in the Lord's Prayer, we say, Our Father who art in heaven, right? So what does that mean, Our Father who art in heaven? Like, does that mean Allah is the Father of all of us? Or does it mean a metaphorical sense, like he's like a father in that he's above us, but he's also merciful and will accept us if we repent to him? Is it metaphorical or is it literal? It's not so clear, is it? It's not so clear. Most of language, 90% of language is like that, right? What time is it in, Nadir, what time is it where you are?
9:09.
No, 9:09 exactly.
Just about, in maybe 40 seconds.
Right, okay. Well, and 40 seconds are how many milliseconds?
I don't know.
Exactly. So the way we normally speak is in approximations. When we talk about time, we don't talk about milliseconds normally, because that's kind of pedantic, right? In fact, we don't even use seconds half of the time, do we? So you ask somebody the time, say, oh, it's 9:10. It's not actually literally 9:10. It's 9:09. Nor is it actually 9:09, right? So most language that we use is metaphorical. It's approximation. It's close. It's this, it's that. It's stretched. We stretch meanings. That's very, very normal. Very, very normal, right? Super normal. And so when we read a hadith, and a hadith could be understood in one way or another way, that's not what we mean by aqidah. When we read a verse of the Quran, and many verses of the Quran are like this, most of the Quran is like this, you can understand it in more than one way. I'll give you an example. Iblis, shaitan, is he an angel or is he a jinn? Jinn. Okay, how do you know he's jinn? Does it say that in the Quran? Surah Al-Kahf. Yeah, it says it, right? كان من الجن ففسق عن أمر ربه, right? It's in Surah Al-Kahf. Okay, so that's Aqidah, right? Like, we know then, we know as a fact, right, that Iblis is of the jinn and he's not a fallen angel, correct? Fact. Like, because the language is ambiguous. Jinn, he says he's jinn. That's unambiguous, correct? So if I came along and said, no, he was an angel, say, you just don't believe in the Quran, right? Like you read the Quran, but you don't believe in it because it says it in the Quran, you don't believe in it. Would you agree? Would you agree that somebody says that Iblis is shaitan is of the angel, is either A, ignorant, or B, does not believe in Islam? Would you agree? Nader, what do you think? Khalid? Exactly. There's room for interpretation. What does it mean? Kana min al jinn. He was from among the jinn. Well, he was from among them. He was an angel among them, perhaps. Okay, that's a bit far-fetched. But did you also know that jinn can also mean angel? Because jinn is from the word ijtinan, the hidden. So you can refer to an angel as a jinni. Whoops. So you came along and you were very confident, like, no, this is the deen of Allah. And anybody who says anything else is wrong. And they are a kafir and they have rejected Islam. No. What they're saying is most likely wrong. What they're saying is a bit silly, is a bit pedantic, or rather pedantic. But the line between Iman and Kufr with Aqidah is fact and non-fact, right? So if it is a fact, that's called Aqidah. If it's not a fact, it's not part of Aqidah. So it is not part of our Aqidah to believe that Iblis is of the jinn, because there's room for interpretation. If you interpret it another way, you're probably wrong. If somebody stood up on the khutbah on the minbar and starts telling me that he's a fallen angel and the angels can mistake, I would have probably words with that person afterwards because that's a very, very weak position. But there's a difference between very weak and kufr. Kufr is, I know the Prophet said it, but I reject it. I know Allah has said it, but I reject it. That's what we mean by aqidah. So when he lists things here, he says we believe in this. So the prophet, this prophet upon whom was truthful in every fact which he conveyed. Were they concerning the traverse, the sirat? So when it says we believe in the sirat, what we're actually saying is, obviously we know about this sirat. The Prophet described it on many occasions, but we look at those descriptions and we ask two questions: is it crystal clear what he meant? Some of it yes, some of it no. Okay. Ignore anything that's equivocal, anything that's unequivocal, anything that's crystal clear. Okay, we're going to put that in a list. And then we're going to ask the question, do we know as a historical fact that the Prophet ﷺ even spoke about those things? The answer is yes. So anything that's not a historical fact, we're not going to list it. Right? So most hadiths are not historical facts. Why? What do most hadiths begin with? When you read a hadith, what does it begin with? From the very beginning. So something on the authority of. Has people seen that? On the authority of so and so. We've seen that in a hadith, right? That's 99% of hadiths, right? 99% of hadiths begin in Arabic an fulan, right? They begin from so and so, on the authority of so and so, right? Now, what does that mean on an epistemological level, on a scientific level, on a historicity level, on a level of questioning history? It means the only source we have for this quote is so and so. That's what it means. That's what it means. It mean when you say on the authority of so and so, I'm saying the only source for this is so and so. If he is wrong, mistaken, or he's lying, then this is not true. Right? Because that's most hadith are like that. Right? Who can think of name any hadith off the top of your head? Hadith that just comes to your mind. A hadith. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Actions are only by intentions. Okay? So that hadith is not a historical fact. We do not know as a historical fact that the Prophet said that. We don't know that. It is most likely that he said it, but we don't know that. What do I mean? Because what we find is that hadith is quoted from, if I remember correctly, from Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, one of the great qadis, one of the great judges of Medina. Okay, he's of the Tabi'een. Quoting somebody, I can't remember who, quoting Sayyidina Umar, who said, the Prophet ﷺ said, actions are only by intentions. Okay? So to us, it might be a fact. It seems like a fact, right? We might treat it as a fact. Like everybody knows that hadith. How can you not know that hadith? Right? But at the time of Imam Malik, or time of Imam Abu Hanifa, it wasn't a fact. It was a hadith that's quoted by one or two people here and there. And they could have made a mistake, right? It's in principle possible. There is theoretical room that they could make a mistake, even though they were very careful, even if they can make a mistake, right? We're not like Christians who say, oh, it's protected because it's protected. That doesn't make any sense. So when we say aqidah, we're going to say the language is crystal clear and the chance of error is zero, not 1%, zero, right? So let's compare, for example, actions are only by intentions versus Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Ad-Dallin, Ameen. Right, the Fatiha. Right, so Innamal A'malu Binniyat is on the authority of so and so, quoting so and so, quoting so and so. Right? The room for error is there. It's a negligible room for error, right? It's negligible, but it is there, right? Does everyone understand what I'm saying? There's a difference between negligible and non-existent. Right? So it is there. You can't come along and say it's a historical fact that Prophet Muhammad said it. Why? Because it's not. There isn't evidence to show that it's a historical fact. It is a historical likelihood. Right? There's a big difference, right? Is everybody following? Khalid, Firdaus, Amina, Sister Amina, Nadir, right? So when I come along and say Aqidah, I mean no room for error whatsoever in terms of my interpretation and in terms of authenticity, the chain of transmission. That's Aqidah. And now when it comes to fiqh, that's totally different, right? Totally different. Okay. Okay. So when I list something as Aqidah, oh, this is Salah there. Okay. When I list this something as Aqidah, I'm saying this is historical fact. You know, historical fact that Prophet Muhammad, whether or not you believe in him, that's something irrelevant. He said, he conveyed this message. If you don't want to believe in him, that's up to you and you can reject it. But it's a historical fact that he said these words and it's crystal clear that he meant what I'm understanding. There's no room for difference of agreement, right? So I'll give you an example of difference of agreement, right? Just for example here, like the ulama, they disagree, like what exactly, on the scales, what will be weighed? Right? Will the actions be weighed? Like they'll be weighed as actions, or they'll be like take a form of something. Exactly how, what is it? The scrolls will be weighed, right? So it's not crystal clear. You read different hadiths can be understood in a different way. Okay, that's not point of Aqidah then. Aqidah is, I know a 100% fact that Prophet Muhammad said these words and meant what I'm saying. If there's any room for difference of agreement, I'm going to put that to the side. Now, you might be sinful for having a crazy opinion, right? That's something else. Sinful. Sin and kufr are not the same thing. Aqidah means the line between iman and kufr, right? That's an important line to draw. Okay? So it says the barzakh, for example. So you ask a question, do you know as a historical fact that the Prophet Muhammad spoke about this gap between this life and Judgment Day? So yeah, that's a fact. Crystal clear. multiple hadiths. They can't all be wrong. It's not possible that they're all wrong. Multiple independent hadiths. They can't. It's not possible that they're all wrong. Okay. A, and the language is crystal clear, right? The two angels, crystal clear, and that parrot that in the grave is either mini paradise or mini hell. That there's a punishment or a reward, crystal clear, right? So it's not that we have a Sahih hadith. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is multiple independent sources, such that there is no room for anything else. There's no room to understand it in any other way. It's not possible. Okay, it says the Quran and all the books. So that's the difference, right? So we come along and we say, guys, people of other faiths, you have no idea how critical we are of ourselves. You have no idea how critical we are of ourselves. Because when we say, I know, we actually mean it. Whereas when you, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, right? You have no idea. No idea. Quoting Buddha, where's your sources for Buddha? When on earth did Buddha exist? You have no idea, right? But it just feels good, and therefore it must be true. See the emotional thinking they have, right? Whereas we're not like that. Muslims are not like that. We are epistemologically modest. Epistemologically modest. Okay, when you say that backwards. Epistemologically modest. Epistemologically, to do with how you know what you know. And modest meaning, yeah, I don't make claims. Muslims don't make claims. So later on, we're going to come to fiqh, for example. We're going to say, you have to do this, right? In wudu, you have to wash here. What it means here is, I think. Here, when we're talking about worship, in terms of your practice, okay, it's what you think. Okay, it's not what you know. Okay, and so that's something else. So that's fine. We're going to say the following. We have read the Quran and Sunnah, and we have come to the conclusion that it's most likely that you have to do A, B, and C. Therefore, we're going to do it. But we might be wrong. We might be wrong. Yeah, it's true. That's what it means, right? We're going to say something like, you have to do it in order, for example. You have to make wudu in order, and if you didn't make it in order, it wouldn't count. Okay. Do you know that, you guys, you Shafi people, or do you think that? No, we think it. Oh, that's cool because before you were saying no, yeah, that's true. Because over here, when I'm talking about Aqidah, I'm talking about what I know. And in fiqh, I talk about what is most likely, right? Al-fiqh min bab al-dhunun, as I say. Fiqh is min qabil al-dhunun, is it follows the way of dhan, what is most likely. We read the Quran and Sunnah and say, well, this is most likely. I'm going to do this. I don't know that I'm right, but I think that I'm right. And it's immoral for me to do something other than what is most likely. Right? It's like a parent, for example. Yeah, we'll talk about that something else. But here, when we talk about Aqidah, we're talking about what we know. It's not the most likely interpretation, nor is it that it's, for example, well established. We're talking about historical fact. So we use the word mutawatir, right? Mutawatir. Is it a historical fact or not? So I get another example, the Mahdi, right? So the scholars, they'll discuss, is belief in the Mahdi a part of Aqidah? What does that mean? They mean, is it crystal clear? And is it a historical fact that Prophet Muhammad said it? So we might all believe in him, that's fine. But somebody might come along and say, no, it's not part of Aqidah because not crystal clear, A. And B, it's not a historical fact that Prophet said it. Maybe there's like one Sahih Hadith, two Sahih Hadiths, but it's not crystal clear. Right? Other scholars say, no, it's crystal clear. There are multiple independent sources for this. So therefore, it's impossible the Prophet didn't say it. And it's impossible they misunderstood it. It is part of Aqidah, right? And if you don't believe in it, you are a kafir, right? Can you see what we're trying to say? Good. So now it says Aqidah, what I know, fiqh, what I think, and know, right? Obviously, you're going to have to act upon what you know. And seerah is I know, and I think, and I doubt. Right? Most of seerah is I doubt. Most of the details of seerah is I doubt. And then doubt. So let's put a spectrum here, right? I'll just show you a spectrum of just a spectrum of anything, right? This is a spectrum of just how we experience life, right? And it applies to the deen. I need a whiteboard here. Where's my whiteboard? I need. I share this documents, advanced documents. I want to share a whiteboard. Why can't I share a whiteboard? Layouts and options. It's odd. They've changed some things on Zoom and just want to bring up a whiteboard. Is it here? Whiteboard, here we go. New whiteboard. Right? There's a spectrum. Okay. For certain things that we know. Fact. There are certain things that are negative fact, right? 100% false. Like I know that's not true. Right? Right. I know as a fact that that is false. Okay. And then there's things that we think is more likely, right? So I think is, how do I do this? Right? Think, this is most likely, right? And you can put think over here as well, right? So I think it is the case, or I think it isn't the case, right? The other extreme of it. And then 50-50. I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. It's possible. It's possible it's not. I don't know. I may haven't looked into it, or it's just not clear to me. After a lot of research, it's still not clear to me. Right? There's things that are 50-50, right? So there are certain things that we can look at, and you get to conclusion that you think it's actually most likely not the case, right? It's most likely not the case. It's not known to be not the case. It's just most likely not the case, right? And there are certain things that are facts, and then the opposite, or other things you know that as a fact, that is just not the case, right? And there's things that are 50-50. So when we're talking about Aqidah, we're only talking about this and this, right? What I know is definitely the case, what is definitely not the case. That is Aqidah, right? What I think is the case, right? And what I think is not the case, like something this is what we're going to do with fiqh, right? I honestly don't think it's the case. It's not likely to me, right? And so you will find hadiths that are like this, right? Hadith like this. It's most likely not the case. There's different ways that hadith have been narrated, and most of the ways are other than what you're reading. So you're reading one version of the hadith, and the other words are different. So it's most likely that is not the case. You don't know that's the case, but it's most likely not the case, right? So I'll give you an example of that in Sirah, right? The story of the dove and the spider. Is everyone familiar with that story? Right, the Prophet right, the Prophet is on the hijrah, and then they hide in the cave, and then they hear the voices outside, and so we know that they were in the cave, right? And we know that the Prophet told Sayyidina Abu Bakr, "La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana," right? Right, and then so we know that they were saved. The details of it are not in the Quran, right? How exactly it worked. Okay. Now, in a Sahih hadith, it mentions that the Quraysh, they got in there, and then they had they looked down, they would have seen them, right? But they didn't see them. Okay. Now, in the Sirah, we hear a story that mentions that they came to the cave and they didn't look in the cave because there was a spider web over it, and there was a dove sitting there. So they said, obviously, they can't be hiding in this cave because a dove would not do that, right? And there wouldn't be a spider web. That's impossible, right? So then they went, right? And so that's most likely not the case. We don't know that it's not the case, but it's most likely not the case given other evidence, other descriptions of what happened, right? Allah, hadith mentioning about angels, mentioning this, mentioning that. And so this is most likely not the case, right? It's not a fact that it's not the case, but I would say I don't think that's the case. Like it's most likely not the case. Okay. And you might have a hadith like that. Here's a hadith, and this again, a hadith is what's called shadh. Like this hadith goes against this. And so like it's most likely not the case. It could be the case, it's possible, but it's most likely not the case. Okay. And then there's some things that's 50-50. Lots of things in the seerah are like that. Lots of hadith are like that. May have happened, may not have happened. I don't know. It's possible. Right. And then there's hadith that you're confident about, and then a hadith that you know. Okay, that's the case. But again, when we talk about Aqidah, don't quote a hadith to me. Don't quote a verse of the Quran. Give me something that is historical fact, so a verse of the Quran, because it's mass transmitted, or a hadith that's mass transmitted, multiple independent sources. And the language is crystal clear. The language is crystal clear. Most language is not crystal clear. Okay? So this is what we're talking about. Fact it isn't. That's what we're talking about for Aqidah. Is that everyone's following? So Aisha, you just joined. Um, but Sister Amina or Saleh, Khalid, Nadir, you following me? So this is very, very important. Why? Because your aqeedah is not going to change, right? And if it did change, should I tell you what? I'll give you an example. If Sayyidina Isa never comes back, what's the conclusion? So we know Sayyidina Isa's come back. That is part of our aqeedah. We know that as fact. Sayyidina Isa will come back. Okay? What if he never comes back? What can we say about Islam? So your friend gives you a bet. He says, I bet Jesus won't come back uh, because Islam is false, right? So you're saying something and you know it. Like, I know this is the case. And if Sayyidina Isa does not come back, then Islam is false. If nobody goes to heaven and hell, then Islam is false. Clear, period. Prophet was lying. Simple as that. The whole thing's wrong. As opposed to, well, the Prophet might have meant this and might have meant that, and the hadith could be interpreted like this. And some say the hadith, okay, well, hang on a minute, it's not Aqidah then, is it? Right? So when you're dealing with something you think is the case, it might turn out that's not the case. It's possible, right? It's possible. You make an estimation, say, I honestly think the hadith means this. This is most likely given A, B, and C, and this is how I'm going to explain the hadith. It's possible it means something else. Yeah, why not? So that's something that could change. Like you could be proven wrong, right? Judgment Day could be proven wrong, or something else could be proven wrong. It's possible, right? You're not going to live life like that, but it's possible. Whereas your aqidah, no, this is fact. This is like I exist. I either exist or I'm insane. One of the two, right? One of the two. And so aqidah is very important. Knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know is extremely important. And this is a big difference between us and other religions. They don't actually know what they make. In reality, they make claims. That's what they do. And then they look at us and say, well, you're making claims too, right? Like we can there's a game of making claims. I make a claim, you make a claim, and that's it. It's just fun. But we're not actually making claims. Because we're very, very picky when we say this is aqidah versus this is what I think is the case, right? And what was the phrase I used? Apisti, epistemological modesty, right? We are epistemologically modest, meaning when we say we know something, and when we say something is fact, we are actually saying it as opposed to kind of just throwing something out there. And we're very happy to say, I don't know. Very happy, right? Everyone's following? So how could you say, I don't know? It is not a historical fact. A, the text, the language could be interpreted more than one way. If that is the case, it's not aqidah. It's not part of aqidah. Now, you might be obliged to believe it because it's clear, but it's not going to, so, that's something else, right? So the text is not crystal clear, but it's clear. You're obliged to believe in it. But it's not aqidah in the sense that if you don't believe in it, you're a kafir. Everyone's following me? Valid? This is Sister Amina or Sister Amina? And who else just joined? Is it Aisha? Where is it? Sister Aisha, you following me?
Yes.
Okay. Why is it important that I ask that everybody follows me? Why is that important that I make sure that everybody understands me? Nadir, Khalid, Saleh.
Can you ask the question again, Sheikh?
Why is it important that I ask that you understand? It's foundation of everything, okay? Foundation we have to understand, yeah. So what's the difference between somebody taking a class and somebody listening to YouTube? Right? YouTube, you're just there. You play as much as you want to play and then you stop, right? You skip and whatever. Whereas in the class, you're here. There's a relationship, exactly, right? And online is really important, right? It's really, really important to make sure that that's very clear. Okay. SubhanAllah, I realized today, it was Ajib, may Allah guide her, inshallah. Somebody I taught for approximately 2-3 years, right? Sheikha, she's a teacher, and so I was training her as a teacher. And what did I find out about her? Because I don't obviously spend time with her. I taught her online. I've never been in the same city as her. And I might have seen her image once or twice, but I don't like see her, right? I don't spend time with her, right? I found out that she doesn't wear hijab, right? There's a problem, right? That means there's not a real relationship, right? If I knew she didn't wear a hijab, that's different, right? I can teach somebody who doesn't wear hijab, that's fine, right? But if you don't even know that your student doesn't wear a hijab, that's a problem. That means that this process of learning and teaching is not really happening because you don't really know what's going on, right? So this is very, very important, right? Very important that there is talaqi. Talaqi is the two-way learning is a two-way process, right? You stop me, I stop you, and it doesn't make any sense. What about this and what about that, right? But Sheikh, you just said that 2 minutes ago. That's inconsistency. It's not an inconsistency because, oh, cool, okay, I get you now. This is called learning as opposed to I've listened to every single YouTube video possible, right? So it's very, very important.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry, Sheikh. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very loud and clear, yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm trying to navigate myself on this Zoom. I'm very much around. Um, my name's Amina, so that's how you say it.
Amen. Okay. Khair, inshallah. Okay, jazakallah. Okay, so we have that picture, inshallah ta'ala. So we said aqidah is that which is established through crystal clear language, historical fact meaning multiple independent sources, right? Multiple each generation, right? So again, I'm talking to a Christian. He says, yeah, look, I've got multiple independent sources that Jesus died on the cross. Look, John said it, Matthew said it, Mark said it, Luke said it. Okay, well, who are those people anyway? And who quoted them? Oh, I don't know. I don't know who they are, and I don't know who's quoting them. That's not how Islam works. Islam, Sayyidina Umar, so-and-so, he's son of so-and-so, son of son. Where is he? What is he doing? Who studied with him? Who didn't study with him? When did he live? When did he die? Everything. People are historical fact. They are historical individuals, right? We have information about people as opposed to, I don't even know who you are anyway, right? And again, no religion will have this. The only religion I could imagine would have this is Sikhism, right? Because it's modern, or not modern, but it's newish, right? And what's it called? Um, what's the religion in Utah? What's it called? Mormonism, right? Mormonism, a modern religion, right? So you can imagine they say, here's the Book of Mormon, and here's a main person, and here are his students, right? You get they're historical people. I mean, they're known people right? But you talk about Judaism. Who studied who narrated the Torah from Moses and from that person down? There's just a list of names. We don't even know they're just names. We don't know who these people are. We don't even know who these people are. Whereas in Islam, it's like we know who these people are. But you could actually take things apart. You can criticize. It's critiquable, right? And so that's a key thing. And what I mentioned with Islam is you say, if this is not true with Aqidah, if it's not true, then Islam is false. There's this idea, what's it called? Something being falsifiable, right? Has anybody heard of that phrase before? Falsifiable, right? We talk about that in the science of the philosophy of science, right? Something being falsifiable, right? Is that in order for you to be meaningful scientific statement, it has to be falsifiable. Like you're saying something and it's clear enough and tangible enough so that somebody could disprove it. And if it's not disprovable, you're not really saying anything, right? So somebody says, for example, Islam is awesome. Okay, well then why are all terrorists Muslim? Why this? Why this? Why this? Oh yeah, good point. What does that even mean? Islam is awesome. Like, that's not really a statement. But when you say, for example, Aqidah, you're saying, I know this is the case. God exists. Okay, if it turns out you don't come out the grave, do you know Islam is true? No, no. You say, no, it's false. If I don't come out the grave, then Islam is false. So I'm actually saying something that is solid, right? It's not just wishy-washy. It could be understood in any way, right? I'm saying, if the Aqidah, this is what I'm saying. If it's not the case, Islam isn't true, period, right? As opposed to when you talk about something you think or may not be the case, that's totally different, right? It's totally different. That's not an issue of aqidah. That's an issue of what is most likely, and you should follow that. What is most likely, but yeah, that's something else. Okay. So write these words down. Epistemological modesty. That's a useful term to use for yourself to understand what it means. I'm talking to other Muslims. Epistemological modesty. Multiple independent sources, right? Do you know this with Buddha said this? Multiple independent sources or one source? What is the source for that? How did you know what Buddha says anyway? Okay, multiple independent sources. Crystal clear, obviously, we mentioned that. What did we mention? We said something that's falsifiable, right? You're actually saying something as opposed to Jesus loves me. If Jesus doesn't love you, what would happen? Right? Religion is often labeled like this, not falsified. We're not really saying anything. Oh, there was an earthquake because everybody sinned. Okay, if people didn't sin, do you think there'd be an earthquake? Yeah. Okay, then you're not really saying anything, are you? Right? Whereas there are certain things about in Islam it's falsifiable, right? At least epistemologically falsifiable, not epistemological. What's the word? Not epistemological and falsifiable, it's called. Um, eschatologically, eschatology means talking about the hereafter, eschatology, right? So like you are actually saying something like if you don't come out the grave, Islam is actually false. If there is no gap between life and judgment day, like you don't go into the grave and wait there, then Islam is false, right? Because Prophet was mistaken or a liar, one of the two, in which case it's wrong. It's all wrong, right? Whereas many other things, right? If the Prophet didn't actually say um, actions are only by intentions, if that's actually a mistake, Islam is still true because it guess we just made a mistake, right? Which is extremely unlikely. But in itself, right? In itself, it's not something it's not going to change, right? So knowing what you know is very important, particularly when you're coming to a time of change. People are confused. What do I know? What do I not know about Islam? Right? And many people, what they do is they treat as creed something that's not creed, right? And then they get confused when things change, right? Like I've worn niqab my whole life. My mum wore niqab. Everybody wears niqab, and then suddenly, oh, niqab is optional. What? I'm confused. I'm confused. I'm like, oh, what's the deen? I've never joined prayers in my life. Oh, you can join prayer. Like, what does that mean, joining prayers? I've never heard of that. And they get confused and they think, because for them, that was part of their creed. Like, you have to pray each 5 prayer on time without exception, even if you're traveling, even. But they didn't know what they knew, and they didn't know what they didn't know. So then it's kind of like it's just they're all over the place. So it's very important to know what you know what you don't know. This is your aqidah, period. These things do not change ever, right? And there's no room for them to change. Okay, someone else has just joined. I can't see who else. Yeah, E. So we're in the middle of a deep conversation. Inshallah, we'll come to this. Please listen to the recording on this. It's quite deep. Okay, let's move on, inshallah. So then it goes on to chapter 2, worship. And it says how to make wudu. What is this then? What's this book about? What's this chapter about? So this chapter is about what we know and what we think we should do. So this is different. This chapter is not based on what I know alone. This chapter is based on what we know or what we think. So either we know as a historical fact that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us in the Quran or in his own words to do, right? Or he most likely said to do, right? And you say, well, what do you mean most likely? Based on whose judgment? Well, this chapter here, okay, from here, this is page, whatever, page 11. This, all the way, keep going. This is based on the conclusions of the Shafi'is. Who are the Shafi'is? So the Shafi'is are a group of scholars, okay? A group of scholars, you could say about 10,000 scholars, okay? They've been around for about 1,100, 1,200 years, depending how you want to organize it, okay? And they've been looking at the Quran and Sunnah based on a fixed methodology, okay? And they've been working with cross-generational cooperation, okay? So fixed methodology, group work. This is fundamental. Group work, right? There's a group of people over cross generations, okay? And they're working with a fixed, clear methodology, okay? And they're looking at the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, what's the difference between anybody else looking at the Quran and Sunnah? Well, I can look at the Quran and Sunnah. I can Google right now. Do I have to intend to wudu? Do I have to do anything? Just Google it. I mean, I'll just find it and see if it's in the Quran, see if it's in the Hadith. What's the problem? What's the difference? The difference is you don't have a fixed methodology. What do you mean a fixed methodology? Well, there's different ways you could process the Quran and Sunnah. There's different ways you can process the complexities of language. There's different ways you could process the complexities of finding out what is most likely. There's many variables. And so when you have a large body of people, like 10,000 people, working together with a fixed methodology, okay, which is called Shafi'ism, the Shafi madhab. It's not an individual, it's not Imam Shafi, right? That's just like the label, right? But it's not him, it's not Imam Shafi himself, it's the group, right? There's a group of people, about 10,000 people, working over for approximately 1,200 years, okay? And they're working with a fixed methodology and they're building on each other, right? And so what does that mean? It means any answer from this page to the end is way better than any answer you could get from some individual or a small group, right? So what do I mean by a small group or an individual? I mean specifically Salafism, right? I don't like to use terms because terms are often hurtful and accusatory. They're used in like, oh, this person's that, right? But I have to be clear, right? It's important to be clear. So somebody who is Salafi, when you say I'm Salafi, what does that mean? It means I just follow Quran and Sunnah. Or we all follow Quran and Sunnah. So what's the difference? Right? What's the difference between me and you then? Okay, so the Shafis, they follow the Quran and Sunnah, and this person who's Salafi follows Quran and Sunnah. The Shafis, they have a fixed, sophisticated tool of interpretation. A Salafi has a simplified, easily accessible way. So it's much easier, right? It's a bit more like mixed martial arts that you'd started off in, like, you know, someone who just wants to do mixed martial arts, like as opposed to someone who's like third dan taekwondo or whatever, third dan karate, right? If you say karate, you say which style of karate, right? Because you have a fixed methodology. So everybody's following Quran and Sunnah, and so we respect and we love every Muslim who wants to follow Quran and Sunnah, right? And we don't denigrate people and say you're this group or that group. But what's the difference? Is that one is not have cross-generational, right? The Salafi, his reference is Quran and Sunnah. And so by necessity, he's not building on previous work. He's saying, I don't do taqleed. I just follow Quran and Sunnah. So he doesn't benefit from previous research, right? Whereas a Shafi'i or a Maliki or a Hanafi or a Hanbali, they are working within a framework. So they have a very sophisticated and fixed methodology, whereas a Salafi doesn't. Like you say, what is Salafi usul al-fiqh? Like they don't have Salafi usul al-fiqh, doesn't exist. So it's kind of like vague, right? Mixed martial arts, right? I just need to win, right? Whatever that is, right? Whereas a Shafi or a Maliki or a Hanafi, they have fixed research methods, work in a particular way, right? That you can hold them to, and you can find out that they make an error, right? They'll say Imam Shafi made an error here, so makes an error here because he's not working within the framework. Okay. So and then they have cross-generational, right? So somebody says something, somebody builds. Somebody says something, somebody builds. It's like, so if you have like an ant hill, right? So you have like who can do more? 1,000 years of ants or an elephant? Well, an elephant's much stronger than an ant. No, sir. Right? So even if Sheikh so-and-so today is better than an individual of the past, faradan, I'm just saying hypothetically, right? You can't outdo them because it's too many people. Right? So then it's a no-brainer why historically people have followed madhahib, because it's stable and it's sophisticated and it's right. Whereas what you have is not stable and sophisticated, it can change very easily because you don't have fixed research methods. They have fixed research methods. You don't have cross-generational effort. They do. Right? So recently, I'll give you an example. Recently, within the Salafi movement, there are certain individuals who are very popular, right? Like Bin Baz, rahimahullah, like Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah, like Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, right? And so recently there was a book comparing their opinions, right? So that's exactly what happened with the madhahib, right? You have Imam Muhammad, Imam Abu Hanifa, Qadi Abu Yusuf. These are three people working within the same framework, slightly different answers, but the framework. And then that built for the Hanafi school, right? But so imagine now, so basically you're restarting this process. Where's the difference? Is these people are not on the level of Imam Abu Hanifa or any of these people at all, A. And then they haven't had 1,000 years of people researching after them. So even if you went 1,000 years into the future, the only way you could outdo a madhab is through AI. That's how you could do it. Because then you could do what 10,000 people have done, right? and there's obviously problems with that on the side, but that's basically the issue, right? Is that you can't, right? Like the number of people that you're talking about and the amount of research and the amount of pages, the amount of books written, you can't, and the amount of correction and editing, like you can't really do that in a generation or two or three. You can't outdo 1,000 years of work, right? So basically what happened is by the third, fourth century, these systems began to outdo any individual. So then what happened is anybody who came along, they just joined one of these because it's too big, right? It's like, it's like a solar system, right? Like you can't be by yourself if there's something like the sun around you. Like it's just too big. The sun is just going to pull you in. So you're going to be part of this solar system or that solar system, right? That's just how it is. So that's why historically every scholar has been either Shafi'i, right? From the third, fourth century, basically every single person you see, Shafi'i, Maliki, this. Now they don't necessarily agree in the specifics, right? Because again, it's a system, it's not an answer, right? But it's very different. You see somebody who is, part of a system as opposed to someone who's not part of a system is a huge difference, like huge. What this person like? So they're going to say like crazy things, right? Ibn Uthaymeen arguably is a Hanbali, not really properly Salafi. Um, in that sense, right? And I'm not talking about Salafi Aqidah, that's something else, but I'm talking about in fiqh. When someone says Quran and Sunnah, what you're saying is, I don't have a fixed methodology and I'm not building on previous research. So you kind of like just by yourself, totally. You might be right. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's just a huge risk. Whereas here, when I say, here it says, you have to make intention. Who says that? 10,000 Shafis say that. Oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that. So what is it? They have fixed research and they all looked at the Quran and Sunnah and they all came to that conclusion. Okay, great. Let's move on. That sounds really good to me. As opposed to what Farid Dingle says or Sheikh so-and-so says or this, right? Even if they're amazing, even if you live for 200 years, right? You can't beat a system like that. It's not possible. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, so I self-interpretation, I wouldn't even make that claim. Okay, I wouldn't even make that claim. Because self-interpretation is a tuhma, is you're accusing them of being like selfish and crazy, right? I'm saying you're amazing. You are totally amazing, genuine, knowledgeable, sincere, but you're not bigger than a system, period, right? You're not bigger than a system. So that's why when I come along, for example, someone asks me a question, right? I'm judging that they want the Shafi answer or not. But if it's Shafi, for example, I have a Shafi Q&A, like you want the Shafi question, I'm going to look in all these books, like right next to me. I have how many books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 20 times 20 times 6 times, it's like 500 books, 700 books next to me, right? And that's not all of the tradition, like 700 books. And I'm going to look there and try and find your answer. As opposed to, I don't know what the answer is. Let's just look at the Quran and Sunnah. Like, I mean, I might come up with a really sophisticated answer after like 100 years, it's possible, but it doesn't beat all these authors. It doesn't beat them, period. Right? And they're not doing copy and paste. It's like genuine criticism. People say things like, no, I disagree with you. People disagree. People correct the imams. People correct everybody because it's a system, right? But they have a fixed system as opposed to somebody who does not have a fixed system, right? And you ask them, what's your approach to this? They don't have an answer. Like they don't have an answer to A or B. It's just kind of random, right? And again, it's not an issue of morality or lack of sincerity. It might be very sincere. It might be huge, super sincere. But sincerity is one thing and accuracy is something else, right? I'm very sincere and I made a drug that cures kids with this disease. With all due respect, Fareed, you're just an individual. Like you're not even a company, just an individual. How do we know this chemical is safe as opposed to an organization, right? Now, unless that organization is messed up for some reason or something else, right? Inshallah, we'll continue here. So again, we're talking about fiqh. We're talking about what we think is the case. We don't know is the case. We're not making the claim that we know is the case. But we're saying 10,000 people have worked cross generation within a fixed methodology to come to a conclusion. That's what we mean by madhab. We don't mean sect. We don't mean and we're right and everyone else is wrong. We say it's pretty good to be fair, right? It might be wrong, but it might be wrong. It doesn't have to be right, but it's not wrong. It's not invalid, that's for sure, is it? It's not invalid work, right? Somebody else is saying invalid, right? And it's very easy. It's like somebody who does martial arts, and then you see someone who doesn't do martial arts, like you just know like this person's not what you're talking about. Like they have no sense of anything, as opposed to somebody who's a graduate of a martial art, right? Like they've done martial arts and they've come out the other end. That's something different. Like they have systems in their head. They have this, they're coming from something as opposed to someone just like coming out of a vacuum. It's like random. Everyone's following me? Inshallah. We'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.